Jerome is een van die grootste regions vir ARA. Die besigste man.
I actually think we're gonna win in
Cedarburg, yeah, it's going on. Ek kan nie wag nie, ek wil eintlik daar wees. So vir 'n paar ander party so wel lekker.
Niet hy pas te slaap.
Nee man, ek wil van parties en ander parties.
Oh, die ander parties.
Wat ook wel kanse vir daai.
Ek het uitgesien vir hy baie leksie.
Ja, hy was baie disappointing. Dat hulle baie elections cancel het.
Ek het nou gesien, nou die dag nou, een van die ANC het gekom en daar so dat kom met hulle vir hande gevat. Hy was al klaar in die munisipaliteit.
Hulle man kom stil, hulle sal nie eens oor gaan vir geld.
Ja.
Daar is die loyalty wat hulle het vir ARA.
Toe sê ek vir hom dat hande ken geld. Politicians van vandag, as hulle wen, die eerste ding wat hulle doen, koop hulle 'n kwaai huis en koop hulle 'n kwaai kar. Hande het klaar daai goed. Sien, hande gaan na die mense kyk. Hy gaan nie om 'n kwaai kar of 'n kwaai huis.
Materiale bedoeldes gaan oor mense, by die hart vir mense. En dat is iets wat die politicians moet realize. But we're not politicians, we do politics, but our hearts is for the people. They must come and get some pointers for us.
Everybody. So, welcome guys, welcome. Welcome, and I know we are live already, so I'll just prepare myself. Hope we are good to go. Well, thank you guys for joining. I know it's a bit cold and I know it's a bit rainy, wet in Cape Town. And thank you. So we'll just be for about 15 minutes. And welcome from Bergrivier and leader Angelo from South, and Cheslin, the National Youth Leader, Charmaine from Tygerberg. So welcome, and we welcome all the viewers. And once again, this is just a letter and address from ARA as members and as from myself, the leader, and with great concern. So I'm going to be about 15 minutes just to dealing with the address and of course and a follow-up to last week. And I really, before I begin, I want to applaud all those who are anti the lockdown measures, and we're glad for that. We just moved this recording into our boardroom, so this address will be on that I'm reading that's available already, and will be sent to the normal media houses. So once again, good evening. So ARA has been born out of the dire needs of South Africans and witnessing the immense socio-economic lack in our country as a result of many ills such as the corruption and the incompetence of political leaders. And I want to add that that's the reason why ARA was born and the need of why ARA was born. Let me address the parliamentarians. Our 400 parliamentarians are like delinquents, pushing for a minimum of 1.6 million per annum. I believe that's now the minimum rate they are pushing for. Yet they do not have any access or success in combating corruption or tackling any of the issues faced by communities. They have failed to address the issues faced by the most vulnerable in our society. President Cyril Ramaphosa and his crony government are a typical case in point. For example, the Maverick in February 2021 reported, the Daily Maverick reported that from the 24 key themes that he addressed and he promised and he highlighted at the SONA of 2018, out of the 24 key themes, Ferrell, a journalist, noted that he has only accomplished about 17 of those key themes. Others, well, actually, in fact, one is being completed and the other 4 are still in talks. And they blame the COVID-19 for the impact. 4 of the key themes could not be substantiated due to a lack of information in the public domain. Now, this is a poor reflection of our government and our president and what they have accomplished. While ARA considers those affected by this phantom virus, it rejects any lockdown measures proposed in light of the inadequate evidence provided by government. And this is not a pandemic compared to the Spanish flu in 1912, killing more than 50 million people. Now that's a shock. I mean, we compare this to the Spanish flu, or comparable to the swine flu. Remember that the Spanish flu killed 50 million people, and the population of the world at that time was about 1.5 billion people to 2 billion people. The swine flu really in 2009 only lasted for a year. So this, you cannot compare these acts to, or this pandemic to the swine flu. That's not measurable because we deem that and then we offer the lockdown situations. And I'll address some law issues in a bit later. South Africans, unfortunately, sit with a dilemma that we love television and we love the hyped up stories in the media. And we have been taken for jesters or harlequins by the media, which has deluded and doped its audiences. We were made fearful of HIV and AIDS once upon a time, thinking that if we would not dare touch or inhale or breathe the same area of the infected. And there's the same issues today that COVID brings. The daily online magazine brings profit to the globalists that has made money at the expense of things like, and I just want to show you how the media operates, the oil war in Iraq, the DRC, Congo, the killing of the African leader, Gaddafi. And of course, the last thing is global warming that's been so much preached for the last decade. And if most of you will remember that Al Gore was actually the propagator, the leader regarding global warming. And thanks to COVID-19, the news has been a gateway of gullibility. So that is just how we have been engrossed in the news and we've been taken for a play. Now, regards to the jury system in the end with COVID, the COVID vaccine has not been proven to work, and there are too many specialists that warrant this comment. Now, we'll just use one case. There was a case in the North Gauteng High Court between Reino de Beer and the Minister of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs. And then the court came with a deduction that the lockdown measures had to be relooked. Another case in De Beer versus the Minister of Corporate Governance, and this in the Gauteng High Court. This was the judgment passed down in point 4 of the judgment. It says, insofar as the lockdown regulations do not satisfy the rational test, the encroachment on and limitation of rights guaranteed in the Bill of Rights contained in the Constitution are not justifiable. In open and a democratic society based on human dignity, equality and freedom as contemplated in section 36 of the Constitution. So it was then the judgment handed down, and it was sad because when De Beer went to the Supreme Court, it was overruled. And it was ruled on the basis, and this is the lack of our jury system. It's a poor, sad day in South Africa today, when this judgment was overruled by the Supreme Court, in which they stated there was not enough scientific evidence to prove. Inasmuch there's not also enough scientific evidence to prove that the vaccine works. Or there was proof in the Marman case that the virus is real, or the new strand of the virus is real. In another case, in Holla Bon Renaissance Foundation versus the President of South Africa, and they went straight to the Constitutional Court regarding the virus. They said the death rate and the infection rate in South Africa indicated that the virus was not harmful to South Africans, but the behavior of the authorities had created a pandemic or panic and unfair treatments against patients suffering from other diseases. There was unfair treatment against patients suffering from other diseases. Now that's in a shock. The foundation also noted the existence of a journal article that questioned why so few cases of the disease had been reported in Africa. There had also been South Africans staying in China when the virus was at its worst, and no South African was infected. The foundation said it believed that South Africa had long been preparing of something like this new virus through its experience with a range of other illness. And so, and it was thrown out again on the basis that if you could have enough scientific evidence, you could come back and overrule the judgment. Of course, they did not further that case. But I want you to see the fact of and how people have gone to such levels to fight or to deem our personal rights as more valuable. We foresee that the president will continue with level 4 and even go to level 5. And he might shed some crocodile tears. South Africans have been coerced into believing that the rich are COVID immune and not the poor. Government has proven its incompetence with a number of self-imposed, self-regulated COVID-19 rules. For example, let me give you some examples, and this will be available. The ANC-NEC. The ANC-NEC has coerced the country in following COVID rules, which they themselves seem to abandon, attending to the recent Nkandla event in which people are willingly to give up their lives for Zuma. The president himself recently attended a funeral for more than 50 people, and he's still not back from that funeral. Apparently it was a week ago. The gathering of the inauguration of the Zulu King. I'm just highlighting some of the self-regulated rules that they were imposed. The deal and the coerced plan between the Open Society, UNICEF, the Gates Foundation, which was made in Switzerland, Davos in January 2020. We believe it will soon be revealed in what was discussed there. The purposeful neglect of hospitals in Gauteng, Western Cape and Eastern Cape. Now, what most people do not know is there have been 3 hospitals closed in Gauteng, and now hence we've got a big spread of the virus where the virus has increased. And I will mention a few. The Charles Hatse TB Hospital, the Sefepeng TB Hospital, and the TB Hospital in Kureleni. There's also one in Charlton or Charlotte Maxilla in the Joburg Hospital, or Charlotte Maxiki. I'm pronouncing it wrong. But this one has been, the ICU beds has been closed, and we now have deemed and seen and how the virus has increased, or how many COVID cases have increased in Gauteng. This has been a deliberate plan, ARA believes, to destroying our health system. It's a deliberate plan that is now encroaching on the Western Cape. Now, regards to Zuma, we believe a lot of political parties are throwing this out. And so they asked us to make some comments on it. And we are really counting on the former President Jacob Zuma not and to be arrested. Not and to be arrested. As laws are not being followed through, which shows a biased approach, and about 1 billion rand spent in legal costs later. What a waste of taxpayers' money. This arrest has created a precedent for other political leaders, such as F.W. de Klerk, which needs to face a court of law his involvement in the apartheid inhuman laws. And it's surprisingly that while Zuma is on trial or is in prison, Cyril is away on holiday. And the vice president, apparently, we don't know if he's dead, we don't know if he's alive, but he's apparently in Russia somewhere on a hospital visit. The leadership is gone. They have put in place the head of education, which is, let me say, has really collapsed the education department and has collapsed a few past roles in government or her sphere of influence or what she was in charge of. Enough said about that. I want to talk about the regards to the processes during COVID governance, just some processes and things that's been happening during the COVID governance. The president uses the coronavirus to create a pandemic, create a panic, and loot SA coffers at the expense of South African taxpayers. Loot the SA coffers at the expense of SA taxpayers. Now I want to say to you, and to those who are here as well, a journalist asked me a question: don't you think it is reckless of you to say that people should gather? These I am mentioning some of the processes during the COVID governance, and I want to address that issue of asking if we are reckless. It is reckless to blatantly throw somebody's job away. It's not his job alone. His family suffers. His children have no food. They cannot go to school. They cannot pay the electricity bills. The lights is off. That in itself is reckless. That is the most reckless thing any government official can think of. The most inhumane to cage up people with lockdown rules. And I'm saying this because the South African government uses SARS as a specialized crooked collection group. They collect for the wicked, for the expansion of an agenda-based government. Because that's what it is. It's like a bunch of specialized group collecting money for crooks. And during this process, again, I'm talking in regards to the process during the COVID governance, we are encouraged to see restaurants and religious institutions have remained open, showing a defiance towards a current malignant government. I must add this, and in the religious sector here, I was shocked to see a video where a father has a religious church gathering with his family of 6, and he is arrested. This is the most pathetic level we have gone to. And the journalist has been captured in this case. The independent news are really pro-ANC. News 24 are pro-DA, showing no serious thinking or investigative journalism, except I would say the Maverick newspaper. Our restaurants are closed, but taxis are full. The Restaurant Council of South Africa, which represents 17,000 restaurants, face a crisis with a potential job loss of 170,000 jobs. Now, thinking that if every restaurant had employed 7 or 10 people, 170,000 jobs, which has a push-on effect and will push our jobless rate to more than 50%. And this will be a knock-on, but surprisingly it doesn't work because Cyril, he runs McDonald's or owns McDonald's, and takeouts work for them because now they've converted their all restaurants to lives on takeouts, and so this doesn't hinder them. Commuters and transport are transported at 100% capacity, buses and trains and taxis, and government refuses to comment. Why would you that be? Because most parliamentarians own taxis. Mines are fully operational, and these are owned by outside investors. And we know that Cyril himself is a shareholder in some minds. COVID also seems to not affect commercial airlines. It doesn't affect commercial airlines, which is and it has a self-circulation air system. This is just during the processes of COVID. The DA-run city, and I want to add this one, auctions of 60 pieces of land. 60 pieces of land that could have housed more than 5,000 people or backyard dwellers. But this they do to profit its campaign sponsors. This always seems to happen close to the election time. Our tax coffers are raped, paying UIF tiers, which has created a cheap employment force that is dependent on government handouts or stipends. SARS demands monthly taxes to be paid in an ailing economy that is but 12 months away from collapsing, with a rise in inflation of more than 30% soon to happen due to lack of economic rollout plan. There's no rollout plan, there's no economic rollout plan, and ARA do have a rollout plan that we'll speak about very soon. So how do we rise up? We rise up, number one, ARA encourages taxpayers to withhold tax for the period of 1st July to the 23rd of November, or until such time that the government gets its act together, and this is the only way government will succumb to its frivolous COVID spending. That's been proven by the Minister of Health seemingly winning 150 million tender to tell us all how terrible COVID has been. So he won a tender to tell us all how terrible COVID is going to be. So that's the tender, 150 he won. That's how to rise up, number one. Rise up, number two. Religious gatherings to rise in their faith and to hold normal meetings. Religious institutions are not considered essential services, yet they are the ones called upon as frontline workers to hold the most sacred ceremonial service of burying a loved one, giving them a most dignified funeral. Just think about that. They are called on as frontline workers to have the most respected funeral for a loved one. But we cannot gather because they see it as a threat. It is the apartheid successful pastors that seem to have a liking to this present government. Some have even doped Zuma as the high priest. Many of the religious circles are still white-run, and only when they seem or they deem it fit to rise up, then the so-called coloreds and the so-called blacks follows. I use the word so-called for a reason. How do we rise up? Number three, open a foreign offshore account for savings and put your savings in there and bring it back to South Africa when the South African government has consolidated its mess and its criminals. Rise up, number four, deactivate all yourself as a taxpayer and recuse all your tax types until government comes and brings a clear plan of success and economic success. ARA calls, and I'm in closing, calls on South Africans from all walks of life to rise up against the blatant abuse of power, corruption, discriminatory lockdown regulations which are crippling our economy and communities. And really it's a mental deprivation that people are facing. It's a mundane belief, it's a level of loyalty in our thinking that government is creating. Lastly, I want to say our municipalities are in a mess. Just look at, we are in Western Cape, Langa and Kailicha. The sewage is a disaster, it's a disastrous way of living. No person should live in the state where they are. As well as the city of Johannesburg. One of the municipality members transferred $20 million by an accidental payment. And the national government wants to give jobs to Cubans. They claim that there are no technical expertise. I want to speak to everyone that we need to rise up. We are the worst virus you can find. And most people do not believe this because they see government as a black empowerment. They believe that the ANC and the DA is their saviors. They do not believe us. But the worst virus you can find is not the COVID-19 or its variant. Those two viruses are the ANC and the DA. And so we want to say to all members of ARA and to all South Africans, rise up. It's time to do that now. And so I want to thank you, everyone that has listened, and thank you, gentlemen, that has been here. I hope this has been informative from ARA. So thank you, and bye-bye. Okay.
Thank you.